For more on this, we're now joined by Miss Lebohang Pheko, Senior Research and Fellow and Political Economist at the Trade Collective. And she joins us via our video link. Ms. Pheko, thank you so much for joining us this evening here on SABC News. Perhaps let's start off here. What is your reaction to the budget speech today?
I think it was really on par for the course. It's what I've been calling a legacy budget. So it's not only a budget that looks at the next 12 months, but obviously it's also a transitional budget, which, depending on the outcome of what occurs on May 29th, might be something that either another party might have to put into action and to continue, or the ANC in a coalition with another party may have to continue, or in fact it may actually be voted out. There might be a fresh budget vote if there is a new party. So it is actually really a legacy speech, and what I see it as well is the possibility of the ANC trying to create systems and checks and balances that will consolidate their own planning for the future. So in other words, their own imprint for the future. So I think your insert mentioned the commitment to fiscal consolidation, which could be viewed as a form of polite austerity. So we've seen that already, for example, in the steep reduction in the NASFAS and some of the reductions also in the public wage bill. I'm not sure whether that's the right place to cut the fat. And I'm not sure whether an investor-friendly budget is necessarily the best one for a country that's emerging from various quarters of what would be, people call them technical recessions and so forth. And of course, being hampered by not only the mismanagement that took place during the COVID pandemic, but also some of the systemic and structural failures of previous years. So it's a tricky one. And although some people are giving it rave reviews, I think I have a slightly more modest approach to it.
And Ms. Pheko, coming to the fact that we do find ourselves in an election year, and going into this budget, many experts had said that we can expect some sort of tax increase. So would you say that the elections here influenced today's budget?
Oh, they're bound to. Politics is everything. So, I don't think that's an unfair assessment. And I suppose any party that is trying to ensure that they are going to they're going to keep a hold on their political and parliamentary power would probably use the same strategy. It might be cynical. It is what it is. But I think that they have, across the board in terms of consolidated government expenditure, social services, the big clusters, peace and security, the health budget, general public services, which I think interests most of us very much. And of course, as you've already mentioned, the debt to service costs. What does that look like as well? And what does that look like going forward? And I think that we need to also ask ourselves the question, is this a budget for today only? Or is this a budget that we can see being translated into a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan? Because the thing with state budgets is that it's also trying to anticipate and be agile and responsive to international markets, for example, to the vagaries of commodity prices, to what might occur if there are windfall incomes, which we've had in the past. What will happen if, for example, the tax base takes a dip, which it has because of the increased unemployment figures, or rather because the unemployment figures since COVID in particular have not really recovered at all. And of course, with youth unemployment being almost double that of the rest of the population. So some people view that as a demographic dividend. I mean, that's definitely a demographic bulge or a demographic danger if it isn't, if young people don't feel as though they even have the possibility of a place in the market economy, in the intellectual economy, as entrepreneurs in any way, shape or form. So I think as a legacy budget, I think that if we're looking thinking futuristically for people aged between 18 and 35, who, by the way, since you mentioned the elections, are the biggest voting bloc at the moment. So potentially, if all of the young people who hadn't registered to vote, I think there are 12 million of them, they could potentially swing the outcome of the election. And yet this budget doesn't really speak to them. It doesn't seem to take much cognizance of them, and it seems a bit tone deaf in that regard.
And I was coming to exactly that in particular when you were talking about trimming the fat around NSFAS. And if you're a young person and you watched the budget today, what does this say about your future if we continue to talk about a high unemployment rate in this country, particularly around young people?
So, I mean, I think even as early as last year, though, it was estimated that about 87,000 students from reliable sources, reliable research from Ground Up and other institutions like that who do, really great social research in these areas had already anticipated that if the budget cuts which we did see today emerged, maybe 87,000 people would be left adrift, at least even in the TVET sector, not to speak of the university sector as well. And I think the other thing that we need to appreciate is that if we're looking futuristically, we cannot only continue to perhaps put great emphasis or primary emphasis on social expenditure and social and solidarity spending. I think social grants are an important form of fiscal policy, because what they do is they enable the working poor or the working class or the unwaged to continue to participate in the market economy and also have a semblance of human dignity. But I think that we also need to think about an economy that not only provides these short-term, important, transitory safety nets. But in a country where we see that there's an intergenerational legacy of structural unemployment, systemic unemployment, where we seem to have a perennial skills gap. We seem to have a perennial brain drain as well of young professionals, including African professionals, who don't see that they have a future in this country, which is extremely regrettable. We also see, for example, and I think most of us heard that the Minister of Health last week talking about unemployed medical doctors, young medical doctors. And we ask ourselves the question, have South Africans stopped being sick? Are all the public hospitals that we know of, right? Are they all suddenly overstuffed? And when we're in a situation where patients are fighting for beds, fighting for adequate medical attention, nurses are overworked, but then we're now told that there's no space for doctors. All of this is just so incongruous.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Pheko, for your insight. That is Ms. Lebohang Pheko. She is a senior research fellow and political economist at Trade Collective.